morning. That was a very low energy. Good morning. There we go. That's a little better. Good morning. I'm very pleased to be with you. Actually, Chancellor Tisch is here, but too sick to speak, so I'm happy to stand in for her. Sorry to disappoint. A few things. Thank you to Kate and Jonathan for putting this event together. Thank you to all of you for being here. I hope you'll take a moment to look at the museum exhibits. During your stay here, there are some incredible exhibits, including a fantastic exhibit on the Civil War. What I'd like to do today is to sort of focus on how the Board of Regents and the department are thinking about our shared state challenge around the high school equivalency diploma, and raise some questions that I think will drive conversation over the next few months about the future of the high school equivalency diploma in New York. First and foremost, there is a strong and historic commitment on the part of the Board of Regents and the New York State Education Department to the high school equivalency diploma, to the education of adults. We are fortunate to have the tremendous leadership around adult education of Kevin Smith, who's our Deputy Commissioner, who has spent his entire career working on adult education issues, including 28 years as the Executive Director of Literacy New York. We know the high school equivalency diploma is essential to our economic development as a state. We also know it is essential to delivering on the American dream for the citizens of our state. We also know that for the young people in our schools, many of their parents are in need of adult education, in need of a high school equivalency diploma, and their academic success will be improved by their parents' academic success. So we know that there is this critical role for the high school equivalency diploma. And we know the need is great. As everyone in this room understands, there are nearly 3 million adult New Yorkers who need a high school equivalency diploma. We have 40 to 50,000 GED test takers every year. Unfortunately, we have one of the poorest pass rates in the country, and we know that that is a challenge that we need to tackle. So I'd say our two biggest challenges as we enter this conversation are preparation and access. On the issue of preparation, we know we have lots of test takers who encounter the test underprepared and do not perform well. And so we've got to figure out how do we ensure that we're providing the right professional development to adult educators? How do we make sure that we're providing students with the right materials so that they can succeed on the exam? How do we ensure that students who have failed the exam or failed portions of the exam get the support they need to be prepared to succeed? And how do we make sure that when they earn that high school equivalency diploma, it actually translates into college and career readiness? And I know that is a priority that is driving some of the decision-making at ACE and at GEDTS, asking the question, how do we ensure that the GED is meaningful? How do we ensure that the high school equivalency diploma actually signifies college and career readiness? And we know that's critical because we know that the results are not great. When John Garvey speaks, he'll talk about the performance of students who've earned GEDs and enter CUNY, and unfortunately, those students do not fare as well as other students too often. And so we know that many students who earn the GED are not able to translate that into success in college or the workplace. So there is no question that there's a need to raise the standard, to ensure that the GED reflects the literacy and math skills that students need to enroll in and succeed in first-year college courses or in the workplace. We know that the Common Core can be a part of achieving that. There's a reason that 46 states, 3 territories, the Department of Defense schools have all adopted the Common Core standards, precisely because they were mapped backwards from college and career readiness. Rather than building standards, as we so often do in this country, by asking, what does a kindergartner need to know? And then when a first grader, well, they need to know a little bit more than that, and a second grader, a little bit more still. Instead, these standards were constructed by asking higher education faculty, employers, what are the skills students need? And with that in mind, then what does that mean for what students need to know at 10th grade, at 7th grade, all the way back to kindergarten? And in New York, the Board of Regents took the extraordinary step of adding pre-K standards, a pre-K foundation for the Common Core. So we know the Common Core is part of the answer to improving preparation. We know professional development around the very shifts in instruction that the Common Core requires is part of the answer to improving the preparation gap. We know that if adult educators are better prepared to help students engage with complex texts that are that are developmentally appropriate to their age but meet their reading skills gap needs, that they're going to be more successful and their students will be more successful. So there's no question in our minds that the Common Core is part of the answer, and that if we have a more rigorous high school equivalency diploma, students will be better prepared for college and career success, and we will reap the benefits as a state and as a country. CEOs for cities did a study looking at the impact of increasing the percentage of adults in New York State with a college degree by a single percentage point. They found if you increase the percentage of adults with a college degree by a single percentage point, you would add $17.4 billion in revenue to the state. Right, so as we face huge financial challenges as a state, we know the answer lies on the other side of college and career readiness, and a more rigorous high school equivalency diploma can help us get there. We also know that there are more than 3 million jobs in the country unfilled because employers can't find workers with the right skills. So even though we have a very high unemployment rate, somewhere north of 7.5%, we still have lots of people who are looking for jobs, but their skills don't match the jobs that are there. And a more rigorous high school equivalency diploma can be the answer to that too. So when Nicole speaks later, when she talks about ACE's vision for a more rigorous high school equivalency diploma, we agree. We're there. That's what the Board of Regents want. That's what they've been working towards, not only for our adult learners, but in our P-12 system as well. But along with the preparation challenge, we have an access challenge. And the access challenge worries us greatly. You know that New York is unique in having a law that does not allow a fee for test takers. And so that puts the weight of ensuring that we have the resources for test takers on the governor and the legislature and the appropriation process. That law speaks about prohibits a fee for the general educational development exam. The state budget includes an appropriation for students to take the general educational development exam. And so we've got a law that says you can't charge. We've got an appropriation that sets a fixed amount for the GED. That means there is a limit on access based on that appropriation. So when we consider the impact of a doubling of the fee for the high school equivalency diploma, we think we spend about $60 all in, at least from the state side, on the GED. When that goes to $120 plus administrative fees, we will see a decline in access. Double the fee, half the test takers. And so that is an emerging access challenge. Now, there are some options, clearly. Certainly, the legislature and the governor will have a decision to make. Double the appropriation, more than double the appropriation, I should say, to include the administrative costs. Then you have the possibility of maintaining the current number of test takers. Or maintain the same appropriation, maintain the same budget language, funding for the general educational development exam, and you have half as many test takers. That's an access choice, and it's a choice that rests with the governor and the legislature. Now, there is also the question of whether that's the best place to put resources. If you have more resources to put towards the education of adults, should those resources go towards test administration? Or should they go towards professional development for adult educators and opportunity for students to get the preparation they need to succeed in the high school equivalency diploma? If I asked each of you if you had another few $1 million to put towards adult education, would your answer be, I think it should go towards test administration? I assume not. And so that's our challenge. We know the test needs to be better. We know that the future of test delivery is computer-based testing. We know that the test needs to be more challenging to ensure that students are on the trajectory to college and career success. But we have scarce resources, and we have hard choices to make about those resources. Given this climate and given these choices, the Board of Regents directed the department, at our recommendation, to prepare an RFP for providers of the high school equivalency diploma in New York State, to create multiple pathways to the high school equivalency diploma. And so we did that. We issued an RFP that focused on 3 core elements: ensuring that the test reflects the Common Core, transitioning to the Common Core, ensuring that the test reflects college and career readiness, Second, ensuring that we make a reasonable, thoughtful transition to computer-based testing. And third, allowing us to assess cost. I see Assemblywoman Nolan coming in. Welcome, Assemblywoman Nolan. And Assemblywoman Nolan, I should note, has been a leader on this issue. She has raised the issue of how we expand access to the high school equivalency diploma with me in every meeting that we have had. She is committed to this issue and committed to adult learners in the state. So, the RFP had 3 elements. We want to make sure that we transition to the Common Core, that the new high school equivalency diploma reflects college and career readiness, the skills that students need to enter and succeed in entry courses in college or in the workplace. Second element of the RFP, again, a smart, reasonable, thoughtful transition to computer-based testing. And the third element of the RFP, creating the opportunity for the state to assess cost, to figure out what is the market rate that we should be prepared to pay for a high school equivalency diploma that achieves the goal of college and career readiness. We issued that RFP. We got 2 responses to that RFP. The first response from CTB McGraw-Hill, the second from ETS. Over the next few weeks, we will review that RFP and we will consider based on the RFP and the rubric for evaluating the RFP, we will select a winner. At the end of that process, that winner and that choice of a winner will inform the discussions with the governor and the legislature about the state budget. And again, the choice then will be for the governor and the legislature. Change the appropriation in order to meet the new fee for the GED TS exam, or change the language in the appropriation away from the phrase general educational development exam towards a phrase like high school equivalency and allow us to move forward with the winner of that RFP, or change section 317. Those are the choices that will be before the governor and the legislature. Our task at the department is to make sure they have the best possible information available. That's why we ran the RFP. Now, Pearson and GED TS made the decision not to participate in the RFP. I'm sure Nicole will speak to that during her time. This is not about the state education department versus Pearson or GED TS. We all have a vision of a high school equivalency diploma that prepares students for college and career success. But we must do it in a way that preserves access for students. A few final thoughts, and then happy to take questions. As we move forward, even as we sort out with the governor and the legislature how we will deal with the changes to the GED, how we will deal with the issues of cost and access, we must not lose sight of the need to focus on preparation. Kevin Smith and his team at the department are thinking about how do we leverage the resources we have, which are limited, but how do we best leverage those to support professional development for adult educators around the Common Core, around what it means to have students college and career ready at the end of their adult education experience. And we're going to continue that work, and we see everyone in this room as our partners in that work. We've got to make sure there are good curriculum materials available. We've got to make sure that we can provide good advice about best practice, offer models of best practice, and we're going to continue that work. We also know that because of the President's courageous, in my view, action around the DREAM Act, as you know, the Congress failed to act on reasonable immigration reform, and so the President took the extraordinary action of issuing the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. What that means is we've got lots of youth and young adults who need to be enrolled in school or getting their high school equivalency diploma in order to be eligible. And so the Regents have made a budget request for $2 million to support a temporary transition fund to ensure that we can provide access to adult education and high school equivalency diploma preparation for those young people who will want to take advantage of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. So we've got to focus on those preparation issues even as we grapple with the access challenges. Finally, I just want to thank you all again for making time for this very important conversation this morning. I wish I could stay for the panel, although I have to get back for the Regents meeting. But I do have a few minutes if there are a couple questions or reflections. Yes, sir.
Review how this all moved to this new model. What was the process by which it seems like it was essentially privatized, but how did that happen?
So I will let Nicole from GEDTS answer that question in more detail. But essentially, ACE, what ACE was struggling with was how do you transition the GED to a more modern form? How do you, in two ways. One, how do you transition the test from the current content to content that better matches college and career readiness, the Common Core? And then second, how do you transition the test from the current paper-pencil form to computer-based testing? And as you can see from large-scale assessment programs, that is the future of large-scale assessment, is to be delivered by computer. So they were grappling with those two questions, and I think grappling with how do they generate the capital needed to make the investments in test design, test development, to move that effort forward. And they concluded the only way to do that was to partner with a private provider, and they chose as their partner Pearson, and Pearson provided that capital, and in exchange they need to raise the price. But we can't speak for GEDTS, but as we watch this process unfold, we concluded two things. One, that it's the responsibility of the Board of Regents and the department to ensure access, even with this transition, hence our decision to issue the RFP. And two, a real concern about monopoly pricing. Right? There are benefits to a single national standard. But if that single national standard translates into absolute price control by a single entity, that strikes me as a worry. And you can see with the SAT and the ACT, it is possible to have a national standard, but different assessments, so that there is at least some price competition. But we're now in an environment where unless another provider emerges with an alternative to the GED, you have a single provider setting the price without competition. Yes, Assemblywoman.
Are there other avenues that the department is exploring? Because even if the number isn't cut in half, the 26,000 a year that are taking the test, we know that there are tens of thousands, if not more, that need that access. Are there other alternatives, other pathways that you're looking to expand, given the constraints here?
It's a great question. So there are two issues. One is ensuring that we have the resources to provide opportunity for students to prepare for the exam, right? So that the students who take the exam have a good chance of passing. One of the challenges in New York is because we have, in part because we have universal access to the exam, we have a lot of walk-in test takers who haven't done any preparation. And many of those walk-in test takers disproportionately fail the exam. So one of our challenges is making sure that there's broad access to preparation. We at the department also oversee our public library system, for example. So that's a place where we ought to find opportunities to support good GED preparation programs, and we have some libraries around the state that are doing that. There are lots of nonprofit providers, many in this room, who are providing that kind of preparation. So as the federal process moves forward around some of the federally funded adult education programs, we're going to keep advocating for more resources. Our view, and I hope this is shared by most in this room, is that this is a very smart investment with a very high rate of return. That if we have more New Yorkers who have their high school equivalency diploma, can get access to college and careers, they will be able to contribute more to our state's economy, and our economy will grow. So we're going to advocate for federal resources. The second is figuring out with the scarce resources that we have, are there ways to create more access. That is a real challenge. That's part of the reason we ran the RFP, is to make sure that with whatever resources we have, we are putting them as much as we can towards the preparation side rather than towards the test administration side. But our options are limited because the resources are so scarce. Yes, sir.
You said this is strictly a New York State issue, and if there are other states who are interested, any thought about cost-sharing and developing instruments?
So we are co-chairing a group of 25 states that are interested in exploring options for how to tackle the high school equivalency diploma in light of the changes to the GED. And so I think there is the possibility as we move forward with this RFP that other states will join us. I think as we identify the cost for this RFP and the vendor can talk in more detail about what the test will look like, I think we may well have other states interested in joining us, which may create a cost-sharing opportunity. I think also we may have other states interested in joining us in the work on preparation. Get back to the Assemblywoman's question. If we're able with other states to think together about preparation materials that we might make available to students, professional development that we might make available to adult educators, there may be a way to share costs there as well. Yes, sir.
Thanks so much. So on the one side, you raised the important point of the challenges of dealing with sort of monopoly on one side of things. On the other side, potentially it is a more sort of free market Wild West, whereby there are multiple high school equivalency assessments that are sort of unsubsidized and unregulated. To what extent are you, thinking about ways to keep that from becoming a thing whereby, while there's still a monopoly on those valuable free letters, it doesn't become something that gets taken advantage of in a totally overly free market.
That's critical, and that's really the role of the Board of Regents. One of the key elements of the success of the New York State educational system as a whole is that the Board of Regents, for hundreds of years, literally, has been the holder of the standards for education in the state. And the Board of Regents will have to recognize any high school equivalency diploma. So in a potential future multiple pathways to the high school equivalency diploma world, you could envision a scenario in which the Board of Regents might recognize both the GED, produced by Pearson, GED TS, and a second high school equivalency diploma offered through this RFP that is subsidized by the state. So if one of the RFP winners were to offer a high school equivalency diploma, then we would recognize both. And actually we have a long tradition around that, particularly with the Regents exams. Students are allowed to use, for example, advanced placement exams or SAT-2 exams as approved alternatives to Regents exams. So we do have a process that we have followed in the past to have a team of measurement experts and educators evaluate tests for equivalence so that we can have multiple pathways to a common standard. But your fear is a very real one nationally. And again, in some ways, I think having only one monopoly provider with a very high price actually may increase the risk of the Wild West scenario that you're describing, as opposed to having a small number of well-regulated, well-supervised providers with some price competition. Yes, ma'am.
So currently there are, I think, 3 different ways that people can get their high school equivalency diploma, the GED one, National External Diploma Program, and 24 credit. And I'm interested to know, is there a possibility of increasing those options, or at least making the National External Diploma Program a statewide diploma rather than a local diploma?
I think as we've had conversations with the Board of Regents about this, I think there is an openness to a multiple pathways strategy. At the moment, I think our most urgent priority is to tackle this GED question, the high school equivalency diploma exam question, but I think we will come back to the question that you raised. Probably, I think, in the fall, after we've resolved this current GED question with the governor and the legislature. Yes, ma'am.
Are employers, or will they be brought into the equation so that we can be sure that whatever form this takes, that employers will also recognize the credentials if it's not going to be just the GED? Because that seems to be what most people recognize.
Yes, I mean, we definitely will engage employers as we move forward with this process and as we think about both test design and the acceptance of the test. 2 additional thoughts on that. One is that because the Regents have the authority to determine what constitutes a high school diploma in New York State, what the Regents determine about these multiple pathways will, I think, shape how employers and colleges behave, because they're the ones who set the high school standards for both P-12 and adult learners. The second point, and this is and to return to the Assemblywoman's question, is I actually think this question of employer acceptance is one of the ways that we tackle the access to good preparation issue. What we know, and everyone in this room understands this, students tend to do better in GED programs that are embedded in either college access programs or employment access programs. If students understand that their work on that high school equivalency diploma is bound up with an employment opportunity, they are more likely to be successful. Or if they understand that it is bound up with access to college enrollment and college tuition support and so forth, they are more likely to be successful. And if that GED instruction is not just about test prep, but is about literacy skills, math skills that will help them succeed in college and career, they are more likely to be successful. So one of the things that we're working on and want to think with other agencies about, as well as the governor and legislature, is how do we ensure that all the human capital development investments that the state makes, whether it's workforce development funds, whether it's the governor's regional economic development councils, whether it's the adult education programs that are offered at our BOCES, how do we make sure that all of those programs also incorporate and embed opportunities for students to get their high school equivalency diploma if they don't have it. We had a panel yesterday at the Board of Regents meeting where one of the BOCES, our boards of cooperative educational services that provide shared services across school districts, one of our BOCES was presenting on career and technical education and was describing that they, as a matter of course, for their adult learners who are enrolled in their GED programs, they also have them enroll in one of their workforce development programs. So they're either learning welding skills or they're learning culinary skills, but their sort of strategy with their adult learners is to say, come to our BOCES, we will provide you both with employment skills and a path to the high school equivalency diploma. And I think we've got to figure out how to do more of that, both because it better leverages our resources and because it increases students' prospects for success. All right, I think I've exhausted all of you, and it's so early in the morning. I wish I could stay for the rest of the conference. I think this is a really important set of questions that you all are discussing. Kevin will be here, as will some of his team, Bob and others. We look forward to your feedback and partnership as we move forward. Thanks very much.